It's mock draft season, and I posted my latest mock draft on allbengals.com. I want to explain the logic, go through the picks, and discuss it right here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. Hi again, everyone, and welcome into CBT. I'm James Rapien of allbengals.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and buckle up because the NFL draft just 2 weeks from Thursday, and I did mock draft 2.0 on allbengals.com, and well, the Bengals landed Michael Mayer, the tight end out of Notre Dame. Look, there were a lot of guys off the board from Dalton Kincaid, Kalijah Kancey, Darnell Wright, all of the top players that have been tied to the Bengals, but Michael Mayer fell to Cincinnati at 28. And so I took him, and to me, he's the cleanest tight end prospect in this league or in this draft. Comes in, I think he's going to be a plug and play starter in the NFL. Was an instant impact player for Notre Dame, 3 straight years, produced well, even better, school records, and then even better this past season. And I think that's how it's going to be in the NFL. I think he'll gradually get better, but he's good enough to start right away. And he'll stabilize that tight end spot for the Bengals for years to come. So to me, getting Michael Mayer, it is a big win. I think he's a contested catch freak, great route runner, someone that Joe Burrow is going to love, quality blocker, all of those things. So to me, this was pretty much a no-brainer pick. There weren't many other guys that made a ton of sense. Emmanuel Forbes was still on the board, the cornerback. And I like him out of Mississippi State, but he is small. He is lean. And I think the Bengals would take Michael Mayer over him. So I went with Mayer at pick 28. And then it got interesting because a lot of people are hammering offensive line. And if you don't get it early, especially at tackle, you're not going to get it. And just going the BPA approach, Tuli Tuipulotu is a defensive tackle hybrid, would probably play end most of the time, though. Out of USC, I think he's firmly in the conversation in round 2, and he was clearly the best player on the board in round 2. The Bengals had 30 sacks last season. Pass rush is an issue. Tuipulotu had 46 tackles, 22 for loss, and 13 and a half sacks for the Trojans last year. He's certainly someone the Bengals could value. He's only 20 years old, which is a big part of it, produced, right? So anytime there's a player that's young still and produced young, the Bengals are going to take a close look at. And Tuipulotu is certainly one of those guys. And I may be butchering his name a little bit, but no, I took Tuli here, and he's, to me, going to give the Bengals another rotational piece as a rookie. I think he'll get on the field. I think he'll be able to contribute. And then with time, could he take over as one of those starters down the line? Who knows? But I certainly think that he's in the mix at 60, and I was excited to land him. Round 3, Corey Trice, cornerback out of Purdue. And Trice is one of these physical freaks. 6'3", 206, long arms, ran a 4.47 40-yard dash, tested in the 96th percentile among cornerbacks. And he is just one of these guys with long arms, all the traits that Lou Anarumo might look at and say, hey, man, if you give me this guy and I can work with him a bit, I think he's going to develop into something. And so I'm sure you haven't really heard of him, or there might not be much. He might not be on your radar, at least a lot of fans' radar. But that's the value of mocks. I mean, he 11 feet in the broad jump, 406 shuttle, 90th percentile, 6'7" 3-cone, 95th percentile. And he did that, again, 6'3", 206. He's huge. He's built like a strong safety, but is a cornerback. And I think that if the Bengals look at him and say, hey, we can make that fit, I think that not only will they make it fit, but it'll be a match made in heaven, at least long-term, for the Bengals. So far, 2 defensive players, 1 offensive player. Let's make it 2-2. Israel Abanikanda, round 4, pick 131. I've talked a lot about him. I love his game. He is one of those put your foot in the ground and go runners. He's got really good size and was productive, much like Tuli was productive at a young age. He's only 20 years old, and he's not much of a pass catching back, but that's okay. He topped the 100-yard rushing mark in 9 of 11 games this past year, ran a 4.39 40-yard dash at over 200 pounds. He's got the size the Bengals would be looking for at running back. He's young, and I think he would be able to help remake the Bengals backfield, which is something they want to do. And that leads me to the 5th round pick, because the Bengals met with Keaton Mitchell, a running back out of East Carolina. And you want to talk about completely overhauling the Bengals running back room. You get Abanikanda in round 4, pick 131, pick 163 rolls around round 5, and you get Keaton Mitchell out of East Carolina. He's 5'8", 5'9", doesn't have that size, but he's a burner. 4.3 40-yard dash, had over 3,000 yards from scrimmage at ECU, 25 touchdowns over the past 2 seasons, and 3,067 yards from scrimmage over the past 2 years. Caught a bunch of passes, 54 runs of 10 yards or more, according to Pro Football Focus. He would be the perfect fit and complement to Abanikanda, because I don't think he's going to be able to go between the tackles all the time and all of those things. But you have a guy like Mitchell, you have a guy like Abanikanda together. You're talking about a young, dynamic, fast, explosive running back room. And I get it. Some might not like the double dip at running back, but you are talking about completely remaking that room with 2 young guys that can just take the top off, essentially, and explode into the secondary and produce big plays out of the backfield, which is what the Bengals are certainly missing. Round 6, I went with Carrington Valentine, cornerback out of Kentucky. Once upon a time, I called some of his games at Moeller High School. He's a Cincinnati native. I like him. 48 tackles, 1.5 for loss, 10 passes defense last year for the Wildcats. And again, a guy who's athletic, he played some different spots. It's not like he's been a cornerback his entire life, but is someone I think Lou Anarumo could mold. And he ran a 4.44 40-yard dash. So he's got speed, he's got size, got athleticism. I think he would be a nice pick here in round 6. And then round 7, I have Johnson out of the defensive tackle out of Toledo, DeJuan Johnson out of Toledo. And I think that and I might have butchered his first name, but when you're researching these guys, I look at age, production, testing, all of those things, right? And who the Bengals would be interested in. Well, Johnson at this stage of the draft, he doesn't have the age factor on his side, 5th-year senior. He doesn't have the tested in the 60%, right around average among defensive tackles. And he's a little smaller, 6'2", 285. But you watch the film, you watch some of the splash plays, you look, 16.5 tackles for loss the last year, 5.5 sacks. He's got the production. And at this stage, pick 246, if he's around, impressed at the East-West Shrine game, I think it would make a ton of sense. So it's kind of wild. I have 2 defensive linemen, 2 cornerbacks, 2 running backs, 1 tight end. There's your 7 picks. No offensive linemen. And I think that's going to get some pushback. It's interesting, right? Because there is a scenario where that happens. And if that happens, then I would bet a lot of money that Jonah Williams would be the right tackle, that the Bengals would obviously left to right have Brown, then Cordell Volson, Kappa at right guard, Karras at center, and then you'd have Jonah Williams at right tackle. And that would be their offensive line, their starting offensive line this season. Now, La'el Collins is the question mark there. But there is a scenario where this is the case. The Bengals have invested a lot of resources in offensive line over the past couple of seasons, whether it's draft, whether it's free agency. So could the board fall where they don't end up with an offensive lineman? I could see it. And yet I look at this and I think the Bengals have a ton of players that are going to contribute right away. Whether it's Michael Mayer, I think he'd be a day 1 starter. You look at Tuli Tuipulotu, I think he would instantly be a rotational piece in the Bengals defense. Trice could work his way into that cornerback room, no doubt. Abanikanda and Mitchell would just both get a ton of reps, I think, for the Bengals. So there are a lot of players in this mock that would contribute and be instant contributors, and yet the Bengals don't have many holes. So we'll see what they do. Make sure you check out allbengals.com. I'll drop a mock every single week. I just figured I would react to the mock, discuss it, explain it a bit more in right here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk to kind of complement things when it came to Mock Draft Monday. For more, make sure you hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, check out allbengals.com. And for Andrew Fox Miller, I'm James Rapien, signing off for now on CBT, Cincinnati Bengals Talk.